I'll go ahead and introduce them. First, we have Jeff Yowder from NASA. He's the Director of Constellation Systems Division at NASA. Mr. Ken Davidian, he's the Program Lead for Encourage, Facilitate, and Promote Division at the Office of Commercial Space Transportation. I like that title. Chan Liu is a Senior Professional Staff on the Committee of Commerce, Science, and Transportation in the U.S. Senate. And then Mr. Jeff Bingham, who almost all of us know, I'm sure, who's a Senior Advisor on Space and Aeronautics for the Minority Staff, Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, Subcommittee on Science and Space in the U.S. Senate.
If that's all right, you need to give me permission first.
Next up is the Senior Statesman of Space, Jeff Bingham, from the Commerce, Science and Transportation Subcommittee on Science and Space. And I've known Jeff for a couple of years, and one of my favorite Jeff stories is he likes to tell the story about John Denver coming in to testify in front of the committee back in the early '80s, I think, and he'd written a song. He wanted to be one of the first, I think, space tourists or something, and it was anyway. I wish it was on YouTube because then I could point people to it. But anyway, take it away, Jeff.
Thanks. What you didn't say was that was actually a song that he wrote about the Challenger accident, actually, and he'd come in and we'd keyed up my home recorder, which I brought in for the hearing, and he was going to play this song, and he testified, and then he sat down or knelt down in front of the tape deck and hit the button, and nothing happened. And I'm sitting up behind the dais with my boss, Senator Garn, and he says, Jeff, so I had to walk around, and the senator said, if it doesn't work, Jeff's fired. And we got it working, but that was an awkward moment. And I've had many awkward moments in my career, and this is sort of one of them because I was really impressed by the previous panel. I mean, I'm feeling really outclassed by you all. I mean, I heard a lot of very, very, very positive things. In a negative environment that we're facing right now, it was really good for me to hear a lot of that. And I was trying to draw some analogies. There were a lot of analogies made about hairy mammals. Some of you weren't here, but there were hairy mammals and dinosaurs. Furry mammals. Well, fur, hair. This is fur as well as hair. And dinosaurs. And I guess I'm sort of a mix of the two. I'm the woolly mammoth here, so representing the hill. But it really was good to hear the energy level and to see again the evidence of progress being made in this new field. So it was a good overview of the kind of combination of real and potential, and I see real potential in what we saw this morning or this afternoon earlier. I really don't have anything I would add to that, obviously. I'm here as much as anything, and nobody will believe this, but I'm really here to listen. I'm here as a consumer of ideas because we need a lot of them right now, just along the lines of what the Augustine panel is doing. We need to look at everything possible that can enable this country to sustain itself in a human spaceflight capacity, because and frankly, we've got to sort of think along those lines before the Augustine report is available, because we got to write a bill. We want to write a bill, another authorization bill that people can quote, and in some cases quote and ignore both at the same time, which happens frequently. But I'm not saying anything personal here. Some of you know exactly what I mean. But we need to do a bill, and we need to be thinking about what are the options for the future, because we're running out of time. This review should have started 6 months ago, and should have started 5 years ago. But in the new administration, it should have started at the beginning, and unfortunately it didn't. We are where we are, and that's what Norm Augustine said. We're going to start with where we are. And where are we? And where we are is heading for a cliff in human spaceflight and speeding up. towards that cliff. We have a dead end potentially in two major areas, and that's not only transportation, but destination. In transportation, you go back and look at the 2005 Act, we initially introduced our bill and prohibited a gap in U.S. human spaceflight capability. It was against the law to have a gap in our draft. NASA, OSTP called, begged, cajoled, threatened, give us a break. So we said, okay, we'll make it the policy of the government. It's U.S. policy to have no gap in U.S. human spaceflight capability. But if you get within a year or so of the cessation of shuttle operations and tell us what that gap might look like, how long it would be, and what we will do to help mitigate it, and what are the strategic implications of that. Well, last year in the bill, we revised that deadline and moved it up to 90 days after enactment of that bill, and we got that report 2 months late, 2 pages, no, 6 pages, I guess, of absolute nothing. I mean, it was basically a report that said, well, yeah, but we got Orion and Ares, and we're moving forward on those. There was nothing about what the gap meant, what it might mean to the country. So, we were left with to our own devices again to come up with what we think the impact of that may be. And you heard about it this morning. You heard about the consequences of the U.S. not just, I think Frank used the term, not just not pausing or not stepping back, but even pausing. We're going to be outpaced. And not too long ago, I saw a video that was basically, I was told it was done by the Chinese Space Agency, and it sort of was a capsulization of their future plans. And at one point, there was a video clip, just sort of sandwiched in there. They were talking about their station plans and their lunar plans, and that clip was an Apollo video of Apollo, one of the landers, and an American flag. And the American flag had been replaced by the Chinese flag in that video. And that really said it to me, and because I've jokingly said one of the things we really need to spur activity around here is to have the Chinese come back and bring us those flags back and say, here, these aren't needed anymore. That might get our attention. That's the 5-year, that you were talking about, when suddenly we're not there and we wonder why. So we have the risk of that because we had a policy that was based on budget. We didn't have a budget based on policy for the last 8 years. We have a policy that is the consequences of a budget, and that is insanity. Now, what did we try to do about that? Look at the bills. You go back and look at the bills. We fully funded Constellation, Ares, Orion. We fully funded everything necessary to keep moving forward to accelerate those dates to narrow that gap. But it didn't get requested, and if it doesn't get requested, it doesn't go into the Budget Act. If it's not in the Budget Act, it doesn't, or budget resolution, it doesn't end up in the allocation of the appropriators, and so they can't appropriate it. Even if they wanted to, they don't have it within their piece of the pie. So it starts back at the administration. And that's why this review is so crucial. This review has to reset that paradigm and establish a policy and a consensus that we can look at and then find what resources we need to address. That's why in our hearing 2 weeks ago, it was very strongly encouraged and urged that the limitation implicit in the charter of the Augustine panel to keep all recommendations within the projected budget in the out years was encouraged to be ignored. And in fact, I kind of think it's actually a violation of FACA to even write it that way because it prejudges the outcome and influences what you may consider. And we've been assured that would, by Norm Augustine and others, that Norm is Norm, and he's not going to be afraid to offer anything that breaks that budget number if he thinks it makes sense. So we're hopeful that'll be the case. And so, it's going to be essential that at least that the range of options are not limited by the budget, because then we're still doing the same thing. We're letting budget determine policy. And that is not how we became those leaders in space exploration. It is not how we will remain leaders in space exploration.